Let's take this to a very human level. Please tell me a story, tell us a story about how during the pandemic you've used what you just talked about to teach somebody process through games and the reaction of the learner to that approach you took.
One of the biggest challenges for me is how intimate board game design education is. We we sit on top of each other. We surround ourselves on a table. We laugh. You don't think about how scary belly laughs are. You think about all the air coming out of you. All of this joy and glee has turned into the 6 feet apart, nobody breathe too heavy, wear your mask, don't touch the same pieces. Board game design, we thought was going to be over. It was a while to think about this. So for my own adaptation, I had to go online and use what's called the tabletop simulator. If you haven't played with it, it's an amazing program that allows you to not just play games that are out there, but you can actually create your own games, and you can create them collaboratively so that you can have up to 10 people in a room and 6 people playing at the same time. And it's sort of like its own version of Zoom because you're all online, you can hear each other, you can interact with each other. And we had to create a new vocabulary. We had to create a new, because the vocabulary of Zoom has been amazing. But now that we've gone through this all, we have to realize that there's other vocabularies out there. So to create this new vocabulary, and what was weird about it was when we started doing tabletop simulator and everyone's, basically, in a 3D space and they're all sitting there looking at the game, they realized that you could draw on the table. And all of a sudden, my class turned into this graffiti where I've got 10 students drawing on the table at the same time, and they're just doodling during the lectures. And at first I was stifling that and I was turning it off and they're all getting upset. And I realized that that became part of the nonverbal communication. We talk about body language, we talk about eyes, and we talk about mouths and hands, and why it's so important to keep the cameras on. And yet there were other forms of nonverbal communication that we could use. And in this particular case, I kept thinking about allowing the students to do common doodles as a venting, sort of distracting sort of thing. And it never really crossed the line, but became really organic for them.
Again, it just speaks to the creativity with which you've approached pandemic era learning. Were there any difficulties for you making the transition pre-pandemic into pandemic era learning with the limitations and what you just talked about in terms of separation when everybody was used to being over their shoulders, looking at everyone else and interacting at that level?
So I make a joke that one of my favorite examples of this. So right when the pandemic hit, everyone is like looking for Zoom lessons. And I've been doing teleconferencing for so long. I've been doing teleconferencing so long ago that I once had to send a girlfriend a Sound Blaster card and a webcam so we could, teleconference together. And this is like back in days of early 90s type stuff. So this is not new to me. And I teach people how to do appropriate teleconferencing. There's an art form to it. Now we all sort of know it. We don't talk about it. But at one point, the dean of the law school at Case Western called me up and said, "Jared, you got to save us." And I go, "What do you want?" They go, "Just talk to us about the culture of online communication." So they got me every faculty of the law school, every one of them. There was like 70 of them in the room. It was like early into this, what is Zoom? And it wasn't about the technology. It was like, how do I foster these communications? And one of my favorite lines in this, we had a professor say,
So I got a problem with the online Zoom thing, and that is like whenever I play back the recordings, I really don't like the way my voice sounds because it makes me sound weird.
and then I said, I'm gonna have to tell you something horrible right now. And everyone's face at once. I'm like, sir, that's what you sound like. No, it's not. And everyone's like, and the thing about that story is that it's not that part of the story that's important. So when you're in a class, and I'm teaching 16 students at once, let's say in a lecture course, and someone says something really stupid or really wonderful or really anything, you as an educator get to make eye contact with maybe one person. You and that one student who made eye contact, like, and that's a moment you have where you and that person connected. But now, if you do it properly, somebody says something stupid and there's an array of stupid faces going, "What was that?" And you almost getting like an aggregate of body language, of response, of people being willing to emote in ways where they know that their emoting counts. That's why people don't want to be seen on Zoom, is because they're afraid of their body language. And many years ago, I brought to class in a course I was teaching on new media literacy or living in the digital age, my Neko Mimi. These are brainwave controlled cat ears. And my students love these, and I actually still have a working pair. They're very hard to get these days. And the ears will actually move based on your brain waves. And if you're alert, they go up, and if you're relaxed, they go down. And you can tell how alert people are by this. And they're, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, how would you feel if I bought you all a pair? I'm like, that would be awesome. I go, and made you wear them in class. And they're like, that is unacceptable. You are not allowed to know what I'm feeling. And think about it, like if we could measure their actual attention, because we can, like if we can hook up little brain waves and you're not paying attention, how do you know? Because the numbers tell me. And so the students are afraid that their body languages are going to show up through their camera. And it does. It's my favorite part of this is early in the Zoom, I would joke that the tall people always would go like this. And then the short people would always slump in the chair. You can tell how tall and short people are just by just how they frame their damn camera. And it was really hard to tell people, no, I need to see. And one other one is I prefer hot mics. I really ask my students, if possible, can you all leave your mics on? And they're like, but there's noises. And I'm like, I need to hear the noises. I need you to not have to make a conscious thing to press a button. I want you to be able to speak naturally. I want you to be able to contribute. And yes, it may make a little bit more noise in the room, but it also means that every motion is not like, will I say it? I did say it. I press button, go. No, you're live. You're going to say it. We're going to have a conversation. So all of these things are about sort of the how we transform ourselves and how we see ourselves as we do these things. And it's for me, the educator, and for them, the student.
If you were interviewing yourself on the topic of capturing the evolving new now and learning, what would you ask yourself? And then go ahead and answer that.
Did anyone expect that after years of lamenting about online education, that it is now just, all right, apparently it works. And why does it work? Because we had it to work. We had to make it work. And then of course, the funny part of this is all financial driven. Like the administration who were like, there's no model that will make us money, has gone like, we get more people this way. Like all of a sudden, like they went from, you know, we are the great evil that will crush this, to we will the great evil that will exploit this. So the idea then becomes, what is the future of online learning in a post-lockdown age? And that goes back to, what is the best of online learning taught us? And of course, you know, the appropriateness of asynchronous education. Like how much asynchronous do we need? The appropriateness of remote synchronous education. Let us not meet in a classroom every week because we have to meet in a classroom every week. Let us look at this the way that accrediting agencies look at online courses and say, you know, we do need to have the right number of hours. We do need to have the right number of goals, the right number of minutes, but let's decide that perhaps an online discussion is as good as an in-person discussion, that an online lecture is good as an in-person lecture. And then when we meet for a particular reason. And so I think what we're going to start seeing is not a hybrid based on necessity, but an embracing of the fact that we do what we need to do, and that these tools have become mainstream. And I'm really thrilled about that. It's weird to talk about this from a higher ed perspective, because in every other landscape, we've already done it. We send memos out when we don't want to have meetings. We make calls when we don't want to meet with somebody. We don't walk across someone. We used to send fax emails. Like, we've always embraced the, well, this works. This is a X replaces Y. And so now we're dealing with the accreditation part of X replaces Y. Well, because we've already proven that, you know, pedagogically, a lot of X has replaced Y.
We have more or less danced around it, but let's address it directly. In terms of the isolation and all the things you've just described in terms of how people interact with each other, what have you seen that has really been hard for the learners to adapt to? And how, as an educator, are you helping them through this beyond what you've already described?
I need to get these people back into understanding what a cohort is. I need them having friends. I need them having colleagues. I need them having social time with each other. So as chair of the department, I'm trying to arrange these not super spreader events. I'm trying to arrange these opportunities where the world is more than just your academics, because again, it's so easy to isolate, and it's such a weird thing to have that conversation. Again, it goes back to having the camera on. I don't want to have the camera on. I don't care. Like, you're part of this class, and that's what we do. And I get a lot of people, I got a lot of flack for that. Not from higher ed, higher ups completely agree with you. That's the way it works. But even in meetings, I've had coworkers go like, I don't want to have a camera on in a meeting. And I'm like, dude, you're at work right now. Like, you're at work right now. So I think a lot of it is from that isolation perspective is there.
We started this interview and we're going to conclude it with grace and graciousness and how that's played such an important role in what you're doing. We've talked about the pandemic being a period of requiring that we have a consistent personality that we bring to face-to-face as well as online interactions. Is all of this leading us to question what in real life means? And do we need to differentiate at this point in real life versus anything else?
You asked the right person.
I hoped I had.
So I teach virtual reality. I teach virtual reality on multiple levels. So what I remind people is that all virtual is real and all real is virtual. So your memories aren't real. They're virtual. They're echoes of a real world experience. And whether the experience is real or virtual, the memories are real. The memories may encode one way or the other, but they are still real memories. So when we talk about, well, that person isn't a real friend because I never met them in real life, that's like saying I'm not a real parent because those kids aren't my biological product. Like, we need to free ourselves from these strange and rigid language requirements. Language is fluid. We know this. Words change. The word figurative and literal, and now literal has become the word figurative because of the way it's been used in the part of speech. And while that may make you upset, that is how, in fact, language works. So in real life, it's all real life. This is real life here, folks. I am really having a conversation with you. Are we breathing the same air? No. That's the difference. You know, we are seeing each other. We are responding to each other's body languages. I'm watching you nod your head. You're doing the whole, okay, thing that we used to lose out on when we didn't have that. It's so important, those non-verbal cues that tell people to keep going. Those things that are so important to us. So this idea about real life and the real and the virtual, they are only things that old people will talk about, because as we get into the next step of the next generation, it's all the same. There is no difference between real and virtual. That's the whole idea about, like, the word meme used to mean something if you were a scholar, and now meme just means a picture with funny text in it. There's a great quote that we often talk about in our field, and that is, technology is anything that was made after you were born. And that's a great sliding scale. So, you know, you could, and it really works, because if it's always been there, it's not technology. So for their students who are growing up today, these things have always been there. They don't view them as mystical and magical. They just view them as always been there. Of course, the fact that they've always been there means that they take them for granted, because they don't always look at the history of the things that they were going for.
Garrett, as always, thank you for your time. Wonderful
Thanks for
hearing
having
from you. I look forward to the next project you're getting involved in, so I have another excuse to interview you. A wonderful day, and we'll be talking soon.